Hey guys, how are y'all doing? I'm so glad you're here today. We're going to go into lesson 2 for this week. So you should have watched a lesson yesterday or watched one prior to watching this one. This will be lesson 2 for this week, okay? We're just going to keep going. We're studying about those polygons and angles. Yesterday we talked about those lines, how we have parallel, perpendicular, and then we also have intersecting. So today we're going to talk just a little bit more about classifying quadrilaterals. Now, you got to know what a quadrilateral is. We talked about that last week, and that's a four-sided figure, okay? One of our four-sided polygons. So today we're going to classify them a little bit better and dig a little bit deeper. Here we go. Okay. So quadrilaterals are named by their sides and their angles. So that's how they identify the difference between like a trapezoid and a rectangle and a square and a rhombus, okay? And that's what we're going to talk about today, those four different types of polygons or quadrilaterals, okay? All right, now right up here, you see all these fun shapes? Look right here. It says some quadrilaterals cannot be classified as a trapezoid, a rectangle, a square, or a rhombus. Now today we're only going to talk about the ones that I've mentioned, okay? But just keep in mind, not all four-sided figures are going to fall into these categories, okay? But we are only going to talk about these, okay? I just don't want you to misunderstand and think that there are any four-sided figure is going to have to fit inside one of these boxes, okay? That's not what we're talking about. Sometimes we have a four-sided figure that just doesn't fit into any of these rules, okay? Remember when we did our science lessons, how when we classified animals, that they had to fit inside certain rules. They had to have certain characteristics about their bodies or about their bone structures or where they lived. It's the same with these. To classify different types of shapes, they must follow certain rules. So let's talk about them a little bit, okay? Now, a quadrilateral is a four-sided shape, okay? So a quadrilateral must have four sides like all of these, okay? It also must have a certain number of angles. Can you look at these and remember how many a quadrilateral has? How many angles? Must have four angles, okay? All right, now let's look at our trapezoids. Look at our two pictures of our trapezoids we have here, okay? All right. It says exactly a certain number of pair of opposite sides that are parallel lengths of sides could be the same. Okay, now remember, could be doesn't mean it has to be, but just that it can be. Look over here. How many, now look right here. I want to look at this one first. I normally look at this one first, but let's start here. If we kept going with these lines, this pair would be considered parallel. But look at this one. Do you see how this one is more at an angle, like it's going to go towards that top one? So these two would eventually do what? Remember what that vocab word is? These two lines right here would eventually intersect, okay? So it is going to have how many pairs of parallel lines? Only has one pair. Let's double check this one and see if this trapezoid only has one pair. All right, now let's look at this top line and the bottom line first. Those two are my perfect railroad track. Okay, so those two will never intersect. But look at these two. I want you to look. If I took two pins and laid them on these points, they're eventually, look, I can't even lay them there because they're so close to intersecting. Okay, they almost look like if I put a point, it would be a triangle. Okay, so they only need one pair of opposite sides that are parallel lengths of sides that can be the same. Okay, so one pair of lines that will be parallel. Okay, now let's go down here and talk about these three shapes. Let's talk about a rectangle first. I want you to kind of work ahead of me in your mind and see if you can answer these before I fill them in with the answers, okay? So rectangle. How many pairs of opposite sides that are parallel? Okay? So how many sets of railroad tracks do you see in a rectangle when you look at a rectangle? I see two pairs. You've got your left and right and your top and bottom. And I want you to notice a square can be identified as a rectangle as well, okay? And we're going to talk about why in just a second. Let's fill all this in and then we'll discuss that a little more. I just want you to notice that the square can fit into this category. Okay, now how many pairs of sides that are of equal length? Well, I know that this pair of parallel lines are the same, and I know the top and the bottom lines must be the same. So we have two pairs of parallel lines that are the same lengths. Now, how many right angles can we find in a rectangle? Do you remember what a right angle is? That's where if I took the corner of a sheet of paper and laid it down, that it would make a perfect square. I know there's one there. Do you know how many are in a rectangle shape? There should be 4 right angles inside a rectangle. Okay? All right. And all of these characteristics also apply to a square. So that's why a square can be called a rectangle, even though we know that we call these a square. Oop, I didn't mean to do that. We call these a square. It's one of those where it fits into the characteristics of a rectangle as well. Okay? All right, let's see. The next one we're going to look at is a square, okay? Now, how many pairs of opposite sides are parallel in this shape? I know I've got my left and right that look like a railroad track, and I also have the top and the bottom, so 2 pairs. How many sides are equal length in a square? I need all 4 sides to be the exact same length. If they're not, then it's going to end up being more like a rectangle or it could even be like a trapezoid, okay, if we've got different size lines and shapes going on, okay? Now, how many right angles can I find in a square? We talked about this last week. You should have 4 right angles, okay? See, I should be able to do that inside every single corner for it to be classified as a square, okay? Now, this word is rhombus, okay? How many pairs of opposite sides are parallel in a rhombus? Same as our other two, it only needs 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. So in other words, it's not going to have those where it can look like they'll be perpendicular like up at the top, but it's going to just like the square. Okay, that's what we're looking at, those railroad track type of lines. And even though this one kind of has a slant to the angle, if you'll notice, if I look at these two, they're still never going to cross. Same here, never going to cross. Okay. All right, so how many sides that are of equal length? How many are equal length? Can you tell by looking at the shapes? 4 sides that are equal length. Okay. So just like the square, it has that same rule. The only difference between the rhombus and the square is what? That the sides have to, that it has the right angles. Because look right here, I don't have my right angles. Okay. Now, if we're looking at the difference in the rectangle, can you find the difference there? It only has to have 2 pairs of sides that are of equal length, but it doesn't have to have those sides where all 4 sides are the exact same. It can, because a square can fit into this category, or it doesn't have to. It's one of those where it could, but it isn't the rule where it absolutely has to. Okay? You may need to write some of this information down, okay? Because we're fixing to flip the page over and you're going to need to know some of these characteristics, okay? So you may either want to take a picture, get you a piece of paper and write this down. But this information on this page we're fixing to use on the next page, okay? Normally I would keep it pulled up for you, but I don't have room on my screen to do that. I tried to and it just did not work. So I'll pull it in when we need it. But you're going to want to write this information right here down, okay? All right, let's look at our share and show together. It says outline each pair of opposite sides that are parallel with a different color, okay? So let's do that first before we keep going. And I'm going to use blue and pink, okay? So let's do our opposite sides that are parallel. So here's one side, and it said to do the opposite side, which would be this side. And notice how it looks like the railroad tracks, okay? Then I'm going to do my other set, and they're going to go here. Okay. Okay, how many pairs of opposite sides appear to be parallel? How many sides can I tell here are parallel? Like they will not. I think both pairs are going to be considered parallel because this set will never run into each other and neither will this. It's those railroad tracks. So look at the parallel sides that you colored. The sides in each pair are of what length? So this one and this one are what length? They are equal. They have the same length, okay? And this one and this one. Now, it says to name the quadrilateral. Can I name this a square? No, I cannot. And that is because all four sides are not the same length, okay? However, I can name this a rectangle because it has remember the characteristics of a rectangle is two pairs of opposite sides that are parallel, and that's exactly what I've shown. Here's one pair of sides and another pair of sides. Then I need two pairs of sides that are of equal length. I have two pairs that are the same length, okay, but not all four sides, just that those two sets are the same length. Okay, and I also have to have four right angles for it to be a rectangle. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4. But I'm not finished. There is another shape that this one can be called. Can anyone think of what that would be? This can also be called a trapezoid. Because the only rule with the trapezoid is that exactly one pair of opposite sides are parallel lengths of sides could be the same, and the lengths of sides could be the same. Okay, and that's exactly what this is. So it could be either a rectangle or it could also fit the characteristics of a trapezoid, but now we would call this shape a rectangle. Okay, this was just kind of one of those challenges. Okay. Now, for 4, 5, and 6, this is where you're going to need that information from the last page. If you paused it and wrote that down, or if you took a picture, this is where you're going to need that information, okay? It says circle all the words that describe this quadrilateral. Okay, now, I know what we call this shape, and you should too. So that's going to be the first thing that we are going to circle. It is a rectangle, okay? Now, sorry, I'm not exactly centered. Okay. Now, let's see if we think it's a rhombus. A rhombus has to have two pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. It does have that. And then four sides that are of equal length. They all have to be the same length. Does it do that? No, not at all. So it cannot be described as a rhombus. That's a no. My next choice is a square. Could I consider this a square? A square has to have two pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. It does have two pairs of sides that are parallel. So we're crossing off one box. It also has to have four sides that are of equal length, just like my square. So that's not going to work because this, remember in a rectangle, I always have one pair that is shorter than the other pair, okay? So it cannot be a square. Let's look at trapezoid. Now, trapezoid says that one pair of opposite sides have to have parallel lengths. Okay, I have that. I know I've got at least one pair that are the parallel lengths. And the sides can be the same, but they don't have to be. It's one of those flexible rules. Doesn't have to be. So that means this one could be identified as a trapezoid. Okay, it can be a trapezoid too. All right, now let's look at our rhombus. All right, I didn't mean to, and I just gave it away for you. This one is a rhombus, and let's talk about why, okay? It has to have two pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. Okay, now, that's exactly what I have. I have two sets of railroad tracks, okay? Now, would this be considered a quadrilateral? What is a quadrilateral? Do you remember? Quadrilateral is a four-sided, four-angled shape. And that's exactly what this is. So we can call it a quadrilateral. Would we consider this one a square? A square has two pair of parallel sides. Does it have that? It does. Four sides that are the same length. Looks like it has that. The only last rule that it says we have to have is it has to have four right angles. These are not going to be right angles. Okay, I don't have that sign like this one over here showing me that these are right angles. So it does not have four right angles, so it cannot be a square. Okay, now let's look and see if it could be a rectangle. What are the rules for rectangle? Two pairs of parallel lines, I do have that. Two pairs of sides that are of equal length, I do have that. And four right angles. Well, we said the square didn't have it, so that means rectangle is not going to have those four right sides either. So it can't be those. So it is only a rhombus and a quadrilateral for these choices. Okay, number 6. Let's look at this one. See if you can go ahead and guess which one's this one's going to be. I've got a rectangle, rhombus, trapezoid, or a quadrilateral. Now, rectangle tells me it has to have how many right angles? 4. Look over here. Got to have 4 right angles. I don't even see one right angle. So it can't be a rectangle. Let's look and see if we think it could be a rhombus. Remember, a rhombus is two pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. Now, this side right here, this line and this line, those look parallel to me. They look like railroad tracks. But for my second pair, this one, remember, it's going to keep going this way. This one's going to keep going that way. So they'll eventually intersect, which means it can't be a rhombus. Okay, my third choice is a trapezoid. Remember, a trapezoid only needs a pair of opposite sides that are parallel lengths. Okay, does that look like it has that? It sure does. So this would be considered a trapezoid. It even looks just like the example they gave me for a trapezoid on the opposite page. And then also, we have the choice of quadrilateral. Remember, what is a quadrilateral? It is a four-sided shape. Okay, so it can be both of those. And this section right here, 4, 5, and 6, I'm glad they've included this. I know this gets confusing. You kind of have to look back and forth at your rules. But the reason they've included this is to show you that there are shapes that fall into more than one category. Okay, so don't think that just because you named this a quadrilateral that that's the only box that it's going to check off, because it can be both a rhombus and a quadrilateral. Okay, how many of you did not know that a square can be a rectangle or even a rhombus? Okay, so it's just kind of teaching us that some of these shapes can fall into more than one category. Okay, all right, now here's where you get to do your work on your own. Okay, you're going to do the same thing we did above. Okay, so you may need your rules. You might want to get you a piece of paper or a pen or something and write down what those rules were for all those shapes, okay? And on 7, 8, and 9, you're going to tell me which of these applies to these shapes. And remember, it can be more than one choice, okay? It may be all 4 choices, or you may do like I did and pick 2 or 3 choices for each shape, okay? You're going to do those, and then you're also, let me get your F page. I also want you to do, just like on our last lesson, you're going to do 10, 11, and 12, okay? Now I'm going to zoom this out a little bit for you. So for 10, 11, and 12, you are actually going to use these pictures right here, these quadrilaterals. It says use the quadrilaterals at the right for 10 through 12. So that's all we're going to do. Okay, we're going to stop at 12. Which quadrilaterals appear to have 4 right angles? You're going to tell me which ones. Remember, you might need to picture drawing that right angle, okay? All right, number 11, which quadrilaterals appear to have 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel? So in other words, 2 sides that are parallel and another 2 sides that are parallel. 2 pairs means 4 sides, okay? So it's where you take the opposite side and see if you can make a railroad track. So you need 2 railroad tracks for number 11, okay? Then for number 12, it says which quadrilaterals appear to have no right angles, okay? So which one of these shapes do you think I could pick and not be able to draw that corner that shows me a right angle, okay? Now, remember, I'm just looking for you to do your best. I am not looking for perfection, and I really hate that I can't help you do these. I just really want you practicing, okay? So take your time, go over these. I'll send you a picture with these up close. I know that's kind of hard to see, but I'm going to send you a picture of these so you can work on it a little bit better and look at it a little closer, okay? So if you can't see those very good, I'll send you a picture and you can look at it up close and zoom in if you need to. You're doing a great job on Google Classroom. Make sure you're trying to check in every day. If it's possible for you to get on every day, you need to do 1 math and 1 reading lesson per day, okay? And then if you can't, then just make sure you're watching them in the order that they're given. Day 1, day 2, day 3, because they get a little bit harder as we go along, okay? So I'll get to see you tomorrow for lesson 3. I appreciate you guys getting on and trying so hard. I love you and I miss you so much. Bye-bye.